Okay, so we're now going to finish the rest of the notes that we did not get to in class, and these notes involve graphing polynomial functions, and we need to use a calculator for this, okay? So in order to do this, we have to be able to enter a function into the calculator, okay? And so our first step is going to be to press the y equals button. So let's turn our calculator on here. And remember that you may have already entered other things into the calculator. So the first thing you're going to want to do is clear the calculator of any lists that have been made. So I'm going to do second, and then the plus button has the word mem above it. That means the memory. And this menu pops up. And I want to clear the calculator of all lists. So that's number 4. So I'm going to put 4. And it says clear all lists, but it hasn't actually done it until I press enter. And it will actually say done. And then I can clear out. And when I go to the y equals button, the y equals button is here, it's possible that a previous equation was entered. This is the one that I already entered when I was practicing getting this ready for you. So I'm going to clear it. So if there's anything stored in here, you can automatically clear it, okay? So now my goal is to enter the function and then graph it, okay? So I'm going to come back over here. To enter the function, I'm going to have to get a variable in it because this has x's in the variable in the function. So I'm going to have to enter those in. In order to do that, I'm going to have to press this button. I'll show you where that is. This just means there's actually several variables here. X, T, theta, which is a Greek variable or a Greek letter, and then n, okay? The point here is this button will enter a variable, and the default on the calculator is to enter x, okay? So I'm going to enter this function, and it's important that you know that it needs to be entered exactly as you see it, meaning there needs to be parentheses around each set of factors, and then this is the minus sign. Now, when we get to the second one, this is actually a negative sign. I'm going to show you the difference on the calculator. But for this one, we just need to enter a minus. Now, this function does not have any exponents in it. So if there were an exponent, I have to use the caret button. That'll happen on the second equation, so we'll kind of cover that when we get to it. Okay, so we're going to first enter this into the calculator. So the first factor is x plus 1, and it's enclosed in parentheses. So I'm going to find the parentheses button, which is right here above the 8 and the 9. So I'm going to push the parentheses, and to enter x, I come to this button here. That's that variable button. X plus 1, and then close it up. Okay. The second factor is x minus 2. So let's enter that in. Again, I'm going to use a separate set of parentheses, x minus 2. And then the third one is x minus 3. Again, a separate set of parentheses. So parentheses, x minus 3, and then close it up, okay? Now, a couple of things about the display. Some calculators don't automatically go to the next line when it becomes difficult. Some of them will actually just continue it over here, but you can't see it. You'll know that there's more to see because there'll be a little right arrow that pops up. And that's when you have to use your scroll button to go over and see the rest of the function, okay? But mine goes to the next line, okay? So let's go ahead and let's graph this. So in order to graph it, all we have to do is press the graph button. And occasionally the graph might not be big enough to display the graph that we're trying to make it display. So sometimes we have to use the zoom feature, which is zoom 9, but I don't think we'll have to worry about that. But just know that's, if you're not seeing it, that's one possibility, and it just basically zooms in or out, okay? So the graph button is right here. So when I push graph, it's going to think a minute. That's what these little arrows, it's kind of like the spinning wheel if you have a Mac, or I don't know what it does on a PC, I forget. But if it's thinking, it'll make these little like lines right here. And then it'll eventually show up, okay? So the tricky part is the sketching of the graph, okay? Especially because there's no grid marks, okay? There's just tick marks. So the best way to do this is for us to identify where some of the points are. So the first thing we want to do is we want to identify where the graph crosses the x-axis. If we can do that, that's already a good step to help us getting ready to sketch it. So if you look really carefully, you can see that this touches at -1, +2, and +3. So when I go to sketch it, I'm going to put in points there, -1, +2, and +3. Then I want to find this point here and this point here. The highest peak is called a maximum, and the lowest is called a minimum. So if I can find where those are, that'll help me. So if you look at the maximum, you can see that it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, about 6 up. So that's where I've put a point. I put a point 6 up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then this point is the minimum. And if you look at the minimum, you can see that it's halfway in between the 2 and the 3 and down 1. It's down across from this. So that's like the point 2.51. So that's where I put it over here. I put it at 2.51, okay? And once you have those points, then you can sketch in the graph and what it looks like, okay? So in the next video, I'll do the second example for you.